Redwood's strength and durability represent the beauty of nature. From decking and siding to pergolas and arbors, redwood lumber, patterns, trim, and timbers elevate any space with enduring warmth and elegance. Building with redwood also benefits the environment. That's because redwood lumber is sourced from Forest Stewardship Council certified timberlands in Northern California that are growing for the future and sequestering carbon dioxide. For redwood architectural specifications, project inspiration, where to buy, and more, please visit getredwood.com. Upgrade your home's exterior with Exceed Siding by Versatex. Engineered for unmatched durability and a sleek, modern aesthetic, Exceed provides a high-performance, weather-resistant shield that outlasts traditional materials. The ultimate low-maintenance choice, Exceed's advanced polymer construction resists rotting, cracking, peeling paint, and fading. Lightweight 16-foot boards, nail hem brackets for tight joints, and the VZD drop lock system for solid straight lines make installation faster and easier. Plus, with a built-in color cap, there's no need for routine painting. For a premium finish that stands the test of time, choose Exceed Siding by Versatex. The folks over at Danner have been building boots here in the USA for nearly a century. Their factory in Portland, Oregon, is staffed by skilled boot makers from all walks of life. They show up every day to build boots worthy of the toughest workers in America. Every tool used expertly to its fullest capacity with honor and trust. The integrity that they build with speaks for Danner's legacy of quality. Find boots built in the USA over at danner.com. This question comes from Zach. Zach writes, "Hey Patrick, Ian and I were chatting about my most recent project and wanted to share with you as well. In episode 734, you hit on a few themes that really resonated. I recently opened up a wall to add a closet that you access from a hallway. This involved installing 2 sets of salvaged French doors and building custom cabinet doors to go above them. I built a small bump out in the existing room, removed a bookcase, and filled in a door opening that was no longer needed. There were a lot of challenges, including relocating a significant amount of electrical, a supply duct, and a register, matching old floor finishes and customizing crown molding to match the existing profile. Your discussion around the topic of don't let perfect be the enemy of good, and sometimes in a remodel, you just need to make something look good enough versus perfectly plumb level and square really rang true. My house is from 1875 and nothing is quite right to begin with, so using salvage material adds another dimension to that. The walls are plaster and a bit wavy. I had to build custom tapered jambs with applied stop moldings to try and hide some of that. It was more of a game of trying to get everything to look good and be plumb enough that the doors don't move on their own and the casing looks good enough for paint with minimal caulking. One of the ways that you talked about getting good enough was using screws as shims. I've used that trick before, but for this project, I really wanted to make things as easy as possible, so I splurged on a case of GRK Top Star screws, which have a built-in shim. You use 2 different bits, one to drive the screw and one to adjust the shim. It's incredibly easy to make fine adjustments. I covered the screws with my applied stop molding, and if there's any need in the future to adjust the jambs, I can easily pull the stop and adjust the screws. These were an absolute lifesaver for the 14 pieces of jam stock that I had made, that I made. I don't think I'm going back to wood shims after this project. As part of the demo, I removed what ChatGPT says is about 3,000 pounds of plaster and lath, some of which was Patrick's favorite, the thick gauge metal lath. This is on the 2nd floor, and I have a newfound appreciation for the challenge of hauling trash. When I read Zach's email, I had an audible sigh when I got to the part that said thick gauge metal lath. It just came out of my mouth. I was like, oh, yes. So GRK Top Star screws. So for those of you who've never heard of these things, they're a 2-piece screw that you drive in with a 2-part special bit. The screw has a free spinning collar at the top. When you drive the screw into the jamb, you use both parts of the driver bit and it turns the collar and the screw into the jamb until you make the head, which looks like a star shape, flush with the jamb. Then you can take the outer collar off the driver bit and adjust the screw, which goes in and out of the framing to move the jamb in and out. And then ultimately you can cover the screws with a stop, or they make little plastic caps that you can put in the hole. I I've had some of these things for decades. I swear when I worked at JLC, they sent me a bag of them for editorial review, whatever you want to call it. And I want to say I saw these things in the 80s or 90s on This Old House. And my problem is I always want to save them for some special occasion that I can't, I don't want to use them because they're very expensive. Um, Kind of a cool concept. Josh, I'm going to ask you first. Have you used these screws? You know what we're talking about?
I know what you're talking about. We have not used them yet. We've used similar concept screws, maybe for PVC and different things like that, where it has a reverse thread at the top. And so it captures the PVC. You can kind of move it in and out a little bit. I can definitely see the utility of them and the concept. And I guess big picture, trim is always going for the illusion of perfection. And so there's an element of that with trim that it's not structural. And I think that these might have a limited place in some of that. But I think that like when it comes to hanging doors and things like that, I am a firm believer in solid shims behind hinges and sort of the things that really are going to move, as opposed to, relying on the threads in the wood, that are in the jam to actually hold it over years, because as I'm thinking like long term. But I will say we do high performance homes. We have thick walls. One of the hardest places to shim is the window jam extensions because sometimes they're a foot long, and we typically pre-assemble our jams and trim and slide it in as one big unit. And it's not a big deal if you need to push the jam in a little bit, but if you need to push it out, you usually have to pull the whole thing out, then try to get your shim just right. And so I could see on a big complicated trim install that these could be useful intermittently. I don't know that I would be like a wholesale adopter and use them exclusively all over. I think that might get expensive. And I think that a key part to his project is he was able to cover them with stops.
The head is big. That's another
Yep.
problem I have with these things. Yeah, the head's big. It's probably half an inch in diameter, I'm guessing, and I think the screw is probably 3/8 in diameter.
Yeah.
What do you think of these, Ian? I bet you love these things.
I thoroughly reject them, which is what you were setting me up for, Patrick. I love it. I also love that Josh stole all of my good points for them, so I can just focus on things I hate about them.
Go for it.
I I see so many tradespeople trying to avoid using shims, and I can't understand why. Whether it's those flat U shims or fancy screws, the shim is it's a fundamental simple machine, and it's what is going to make your door install work over the long haul. I think back to being a young boy and my sister loving to slam her door when my brother and I would get her all wound up about something, to the point where my dad was ready to take the door off of her bedroom. A door installed with those kinds of screws would never ever hold up to that type of abuse. Not saying that all doors should be installed to handle that, but to Josh's earlier point, you want to think about the worst case scenario of your door install. I think Josh's deep window jam extension and the trim, installing that's a great use for these screws, but I would be really concerned about that massive head, especially when you're thinking about a passive house that maybe has more of a modernist looking trim
Right.
to it. But Zach is doing some great work to an old house in the Washington D.C. area, and should be commended for the level of craftsmanship that he's
The
put
work
into
is
that place.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of tools and fasteners and things like that it's something to have in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that occasion when it can really save your butt. But I guess I wouldn't be like the wholesale adopter and hand them out in packs to my crews and just be like, "Yep, we're using these to install all the doors and windows." It's more so, it's another tool in your toolbox that is really handy for those odd times that you need something to do that.
Who the heck? I mean, I'm guessing it happens, but my experience is if you set an exterior door correctly, they have pretty thick jambs, and use, shims that aren't an inch wide like you get from the home center, get something legitimate from the lumber yard. They don't move. You don't need to tweak stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had some kind of freeze thaw situation in a, house that was built on, frost piers that weren't adequately deep or whatever, you needed to tweak things seasonally once in a while or whatever. But
this is going to wind some people up, but I was taught during my apprenticeship to actually rotate shims and dry them in my garage so that when I was hanging doors, I would always be using a fully dried
that they wouldn't
cedar
shrink
shim.
later. That's smart. That's
Correct.
smart because they're often green. Yeah.
Yep. That was beaten into me by some old carpenter who was teaching me how to hang doors in my apprenticeship.
Boy, that's the second thing that's going to help pay folks for their time listening to the podcast today, Ian. That's a pretty
Josh
cool
put me under pressure right from the start. I had to come up with something good.
Yeah, I had never heard of drying shims.
Yeah,
You
gotta
use those
dry 'em
plastic
out.
ones anyway, so you don't care. You use these plastic shims that glaziers use, right? That are little U-shaped things, which are very cool.
Yeah.
Uniform thickness.
My crew loves those things.
Yeah, they're smart.
It's just, I just like that you can, especially when we're doing windows, you can stack them.
Yeah.
And you know exactly which sizes they are. With the cedar shims, we're always like, hunting for. I need the one that's cut halfway already because I need the half thickness. And we
That's
still
why you
hang
dry them
interior
so
doors.
they cut easy.
That's right. We still hang interior doors with the wood shims. I like doing it that way. That works so nice.
Yeah, and you can fasten right through the jam without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had an interesting debate with trim screws. And their place.
Head's too big.
The head's too big. I mean, even we're talking the small GRKs, which are I think at T10.
Yep.
And I think a little bit to Ian's point, sometimes people are just looking for shortcuts.
Yep.
And I think trim. I think our discussion at work ended with we never want to see them on the face of any trim. It's just. But then the place where people want to use them is on those deep window wells when they're trying to gently shim them a little bit. And, so I can see their utility there. But we kind of went back to, you know what? We don't want the jam floating anyways. It needs to be tight against the shim. And so finished nails they do a good job with that. And if you're used to them, you know how you can adjust them even after you've nailed it in. You can thump it and then re-nail it. And
And if you're thoughtful about where you place them in stained grade wood, a good painter, which I'm sure you employ on your crew, can hide them and you never see them again.
Yep. So
I want to love those trim head screws, and I do for certain things, but the head's too big for fine finished carpentry, right?
Yep.
And even if you putty them with painted work, it shows up eventually, is my observation, because the wood moves and the screw and putty doesn't, or moves differently.
Yep. And it even, the screw head is big enough that it like gently puckers the wood in like a quarter-sized piece around it that you don't notice. And so it really has to be fully resanded. And they make more work, but people like them.
We're going to have to have you back on the show, Josh, because your insights and experience have been hugely beneficial. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Cool. Love being here.
Any words of advice or words of wisdom for our audience before we go?
Building is fun.
Amen.